Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to another installment of the Far Post podcast presented by ESports Gaming League. The sun is shining bright in Foxborough today, both literally and figuratively, as things continue to go pretty good for your New England Revolution. I'm Jeff Lemieux.
Yeah, Jeff.
Yay, we clap for Jeff Lemieux. All right, I clap for Jeff Lemieux. I'm here with Elizabeth Pehota.
Hello, everybody.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you, Jeff?
Not too bad. I'm on the Far Post podcast presented by ESports Gaming League, so all is right with the world.
Yes.
Ready to talk about the New England Revolution, who are a pretty darn good soccer team, if you haven't heard.
Well, and when you said the sun is shining literally and figuratively, I figured there'd be some mention of how the humidity is also coming in hot here in Foxborough. Well,
not here in this particular room where it is
That's true.
Absolutely freezing inside the training center. We do have the Herculean task every day of figuring out exactly how to dress for work because it's always 95 degrees outside and it's always 61 degrees inside the Revolution Training Center. So you got to dress for winter indoors, but then you got to make sure you can delayer when you go outside. So it really is, I mean, it's the epitome of first world problems,
yes.
But what a problem it is we deal with every single day.
I mean, I comment on it every single day because I walk in and I'm freezing. I think it's the freezing that bothers me more than the hot, which maybe it's because I'm a woman and there's mostly men that work here. But, you know, that's always the one that bothers me more is coming into the cold versus like I'm okay hanging outside usually. It's probably vice versa for both of you guys, though.
No, I mean, it's pretty chilly in here, but that's good. Like, I don't know. I enjoy being cold in the summer, so.
I feel ridiculous sitting at my desk with a blanket. I'm not going to lie. I'm like wrapped in a blanket.
Well, that's why
You're not the only one. Meryl does it too.
Yeah.
For whatever reason, I took the opposite approach, and I kind of dress for the indoors. So like today, I'm wearing jeans and a long sleeve shirt, knowing that it's going to be cold in the office, so I want to be comfortable in the office. Yet when we went out to training for a half hour and it was 95 degrees,
yeah.
I just sweat my butt off. But it is what it is. You got. I can't possibly have a short sleeve shirt and then put a jacket on when I come inside. I don't understand. I don't know how the mechanics of that would work. I haven't quite figured that out yet.
Yeah, too many layers to think about.
Like that.
Yeah, it's confusing for me. I know it's not confusing for everyone, but it's confusing for me. We're here with Jason Dalrymple as well on the board. Oh, wow.
Thanks,
Okay.
Brad.
Yeah,
Jason,
great intro
Jason
for
gets
Jada.
the wow intro.
Yeah, the applause was a little late. We're still working out the kinks
That's
with getting the people up here to, like, you know, cheer for you.
You're lucky there's no windows in here.
No, I know. If people could see, it'd be a bloodbath.
They were trying to yell through the vents, but we couldn't
Yeah.
hear them, so it happens.
You know, I don't think Cahal wants to be on this show anymore.
Yeah, that's nice to hear.
Ever since we came back into the studio, it's like all of a sudden Cahal came in for one show, and then it was like he maybe did two shows, and now we can't get him back on the show.
Yeah, Jeff.
I think it might be the hair. I think he
Yes.
grew the hair out, and now he thinks he's too good for me.
I think he grew the hair out and there's just too many secrets in there and he's scared of saying them on the show.
We can't have him in the show. Just things just falling out of that hair.
That was a
he's got
Mean
going
Girls
on.
reference in case anybody who's listening didn't catch it, but it was definitely a Mean Girls reference.
Yeah.
Regina George, too many secrets in her hair. Or Gretchen Wiener, one of the two.
Yeah, Cahal, he could fit a lot of secrets in his hair.
Yeah.
I have no secrets.
I told him already he kind of looks like George Washington right now. Like, at certain times where he parts it the right way, I'm like, oh, you're all like,
Yeah.
you got to put on the colonial garb, and you could
pretty
pretty much be like our second mascot.
Yeah,
you
make
know?
him a musket man.
Yeah, exactly.
Musket man,
pull it
musket
off.
man.
Musket man, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
We
You also
should
have no hair. I understood when you said you have no secrets.
Yeah, because I don't have any hair to hide my secrets in. It's a joke. All right, well, let's get down to business, shall
Let's
we?
do it.
Let's talk about this New England Revolution team. Have you heard of them?
I've
Heard of them?
Who are they?
They're pretty good.
They're pretty decent.
Look, the first bit of business that we must talk about off the top is an actual bit of business. The transfer of
Gotta do
Tejeon Buchanan to Club Bruges in Belgium made official on Tuesday afternoon. Tejeon Buchanan transferred for an undisclosed fee. Now, I understand there are some figures being reported on the social medias. Per the official New England Revolution release, it's an undisclosed fee. So per the Far Post podcast presented by ESports Gaming League, it is an undisclosed fee. The Revs will retain a percentage of Tejeon's sell-on rights. So if Bruges are to go on in the future and sell Tejeon to another club, the Revs will retain a portion of those rights. I think most importantly from a New England Revolution fan perspective and certainly from the club perspective, Tejeon Buchanan will be staying with the Revs for the rest of the 2021 season as the Revs continue their quest for trophies in the Supporter Shield race, obviously leading that race at the moment, and then the hunt for a first ever MLS Cup championship here in New England. And I think as you look at all of the details of this deal for the player, Tejeon, at 22 years old, who gets to go play in Europe and showcase himself with a club in Belgium that plays in the Champions League basically every single season, gets to potentially showcase himself for bigger clubs down the road, for the Revolution, who per reports are going to get a pretty decent chunk of change from Tejeon Buchanan, a player they drafted 9th overall in the Super Draft a couple of years ago. And then for the fans who get to continue to see Tejeon Buchanan in New England for another few months as they try to win a trophy. It really does feel like this was a win-win-win, that this ended up being the best resolution for all parties involved.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. I think it gives Tejeon time to kind of, finish unfinished business here because he's having such a hot season and wants to obviously help earn this team a championship. And it also gives him some time to like get acclimated, come in at the right time. And to also mention, it's tough when you have a big life change. And especially in sports, it can happen in a split second. And we saw it. It did happen in a split second. But this gives Tejeon time to not only finish out his time with the team, but, to see his teammates a little bit longer, his family kind of like ramp up for when that transition does happen in January. But honestly, great for Tejeon. He's earned this. We've seen him rise through the ranks. And I know I posted this on Twitter yesterday, but I found the first interview that I did with him from 2019. And it's just crazy to think that in 2.5 years, he has had such a breakout performance overall, not only for MLS and for the Revolution, but at the international level. And to see this transition kind of happen I want to say this is the start of his career. And like
he's only 22, yeah.
Yeah, he's so young. Like I think it's going to be really exciting to see what he can do over in Belgium because he's hungry and he's ready to showcase it. This is only the start for him.
Yeah, and this is kind of what Club Bruges do. They are known as a selling club. They go out and they kind of mine talent in all of these leagues around the world. They buy players, and then after those players are able to showcase themselves for a few years in Belgium, in the Champions League, they're able to then sell those players on to bigger clubs for bigger fees. That's kind of what Club Bruges does. And yeah, it's crazy to think about Tejeon's rise because you talk about the fact that he's only been with the Revs for 2.5 years. It was January 2019 when he was drafted, as I mentioned, 9th overall in that Super Draft. But the rise has been even more recent, really. Yeah. In 2019 season, Tejeon Buchanan, as a rookie with the Revs, only made 10 appearances, and those were primarily under Brad Friedel, before Brad Friedel parted ways with the club. In Bruce Arena's first season in New England, for the second half of that 2019 season, Tejeon Buchanan was not used very much in 2019. It wasn't until 2020 that he started to kind of settle into a substitute role early in the season, and he didn't really break out and earn his way into the Revs starting 11 until late last season, really right before the playoffs. So it's really been less than a year that we've seen Tejeon go from, kind of an MLS bench player to superstar now being sold to Club Bruges in Belgium. I mean, that rise, it does feel like even now, and we talk about it every single pregame show, like it feels like Tejeon is getting better every single game, which is kind of scary.
It is really scary. And it's funny. Yesterday I went on kind of a Tejeon tailspin. We'll go with that. And I just went back and watched a lot of his first clips here, just kind of to, literally see the growth that he's had. And we had him on the Far Post podcast after his first appearance. I think it was after the second game of the 2019 season. And we were playing Toronto the next game, late March, which we lost in that game. But we were talking about, you could make your first ever start it's in Toronto. And then obviously we just had the big storyline where he had his homecoming in Toronto a couple weeks ago. So it's crazy when you kind of put it into perspective like that. And I think there was an interview, correct me if I'm wrong, some point last year where I think Arena said at one point they were thinking about at the start of that season loaning him to Revs 2. And he kind of they ended up not doing that. They loaned out a couple players. I think Justin Rennicks obviously was one of them. But Buchanan stuck it out. I think with injuries and stuff that were going on, Carlos obviously was out for a long time. But to just see that progression and kind of how it came about, because his path, like you said, has been so rapid. And it's been so exciting to watch because every single game you're like, all right, what else can this kid do? Can we see another backflip? Can we see a new milestone for him because he's just doing so well? So it's been really exciting to see, and also just to see the talent that this team has had through the draft kind of come up, because I feel like the MLS Super Draft hasn't been quite as big as it used to be in early times with the league, but we've seen a lot of talent come through there now, and Tejeon Buchanan is a prime example for the Revs.
Yeah, I forgot about that quote. Bruce Arena had said last year that Tejeon Buchanan, it was because of COVID protocols. Because if you went to Revolution 2, you had to stay with Revolution 2. You weren't able to bounce back and forth between training with the first team and training with Revs 2, which you're able to do now. You're able to train with the first team and then just go play a game or two with Revolution 2 if necessary. Last year, because of the COVID protocols, you weren't able to do that. And Bruce Arena had said that he had expected that Tejeon Buchanan was going to get a significant amount of minutes with Revolution 2 last year. Ended up staying with the first team because of the COVID protocols, and then broke into the first team. It's been just an absolutely ridiculous rise over the course of the past year or so for Tejeon Buchanan. And I will say I am dying to get to Bruges. I've wanted to go to Bruges for a long time because I don't know if people have seen the movie In Bruges. Fantastic movie if you haven't seen it, but it just kind of highlights it. It's just they talk in the movie about how it's kind of this fairy tale city. It's this very old European city with, a lot of sightseeing and beautiful architecture, and it just looks like this really awesome city. And now Tejon's going to be over there starting in January and can go over and catch a Club Bruges game and visit the city. Yeah. And I think, go over, have some Belgian chocolate and some waffles. And
I think you have to have chocolate covered waffles.
Yeah, that sounds right.
The combo.
Yeah.
I'm glad you get your invite already. That's good to hear.
To Bruges. Yeah, I'm heading. I'm already going.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I already bought my tickets and everything.
You waste no time.
Yeah. No, that is awesome, though. Have a connection there. And even if you ever get out there to a game, to just be like, wow, we work together. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, no, it's going to be really fun following Tejon's journey, because I think I don't think Club Bruges is going to be the it's certainly going to be a step up for him to go play in the Champions League, but I don't think that is going to be the peak of Tejeon Buchanan's soccer career. I think there are a lot of huge things in the future for Tejeon Buchanan, but hopefully there are some big things in the very near future as he stays with New England for the rest of this season. And I think it seems like that was a critical component of this deal for the Revolution to say, yes, we want to do right by Tejeon. We want to give him the opportunity to go to Europe. Obviously, it's beneficial for the club to get monetary compensation, but it seemed like it was also really critical to the team that they said, we're on the verge of potentially making a run here, and we need Tejeon Buchanan in this run for the rest of the year. So really excited to have him stay with the club for the rest of the season.
He said so himself as much. As far as he has one last thing to do here, and that's help this club win a championship. So
I think too. I think Bruce Arena, from historically, and this is a perfect example, has done a really good job of making sure that the deals are kind of best for everybody involved. Because this was something that, obviously is really great for Tejeon, but is also equally as beneficial for the club in all perspectives, and keeping him loaned here for the rest of the year, making sure he's guaranteed going to Europe after this season finishes. And, I think it says a lot about Arena that he kind of keeps the players' best interest in mind as well. Because I'm sure that Tejeon, as excited as he would not have wanted to leave this team right now while they are so hot. So it's kind of a win-win for everybody involved.
Yeah, and I think that it sends a message to other players who would potentially want to come join New England at some point in the future that Bruce Arena cares about his players and wants to do right by his players. Yep. It's why players like Ema Boateng, who we'll have on the show later, and AJ De La Garza this year, who had played with Bruce in the past, find their way back to Bruce. It seems like that happens a lot of times where players played for Bruce with previous clubs, and then when they have an opportunity to rejoin him, they want to. That is beneficial for the club as well. So Tejeon stays with the Revs for the rest of the season to try to help them win some trophies. And they're on a pretty good roll right now in terms of that quest. Another 9-point week for the Revs last week. They have now a 15-point lead in the Eastern Conference, a 7-point lead in the Shield race. One kind of unintended side effect of this run, and Elizabeth, we've talked about it as we've prepared for pregame shows, is that it becomes a little more difficult to come up with topics to talk about from week to week, because literally every week it's like, oh, hey, the Revs went 3-0-0, and everybody played really well, and they scored a ton of goals, and Matt Turner was unbelievable, and okay, well, who's next?
You just wrote our content for the next
Yeah.
Yeah, right, I'm going to hit record. Said stop now. We're all set.
Really, it's a great problem to have. It's one we haven't had for quite a while. But Bruce Arena had said last week, he was asked whether the Revs had surpassed his expectations so far this season. And I think the answer to that question is somewhat obvious because, as we've talked about before, nobody could have expected this from any club this year. I don't think any team is ever saying, yes, our expectations are to have a 15-point lead in the conference and a 7-point lead in the Shield race with 12 games left in the season. Those would be absurd expectations. But I guess I kind of wanted to pose to the two of you. You've both been around the club for a while. You were both with the team last year and saw what this team put together in 2020 and saw the playoff run that they had. As you started the 2021 season, Elizabeth, I'll start with you. What were your expectations for this season as the 2021 season kicked off? What did you kind of feel like the ceiling was?
I thought for sure we were going to be contenders. And if anybody asked me back in January, I would have said that. But like you said, if you'd asked me if we'd have a 15-point lead in the Eastern Conference at this point, I don't think I would have said yes. And not to be a knock at the team, but that is really, really good. Like, we are on pace to set a potential Supporters' Shield record if it keeps up at this pace. But yeah, I think the team has definitely surpassed my expectations. I think given last year and how things played out, we saw this team figure out a lot of different components. Obviously, COVID was a tough, something tough that kind of came into the mix with everything. But to be able to have kind of, and I know there's some injuries and things like that going around, but we played most of last year without Carlos Heel. You saw how good they got coming into the playoffs. And I think when you had 3 DPs coming into the season fully healthy, I think that was a big confidence booster, at least for me. And then also on top of that, to have Arena have another round at shaping the roster to his liking and kind of, you know, taking out players that maybe it wasn't the best fit to stay here, adding in other pieces, people who still want to play for him. I think that was also key. So those were 2 components coming into this season that made me really confident in this group. And I am thoroughly impressed with the success that they've had so far and how they've been able to sustain it. Because I think at this point, you know, you couldn't have written this any better, let alone predicted it. So we knew this team was going to be good, but it's definitely for sure exceeded my expectations.
Jason, what were your expectations?
Well, it kind of reminded me of, remember in 2013 versus 2014, if you look back then when, you know, we made the playoffs in 13, they were really good team, just not quite good enough to get over the hump, but you felt that they were going to go places. And then in 14, obviously went all the way to Cup. This past year, obviously they were a team that was completely different with and without Carlos, but the thing that I think that's impressed me most this year is just how well they've played without him. Mm-hmm. And, you know, last year was like, oh God, Carlos is down. What's going to happen? And, you know, they were just clearly 2 different teams just because of what he brings to the table. But I think this year that they've figured that all out and how to, you know, like Elizabeth said, with the extra pieces that they brought in, you know, I didn't expect them to be as good as they are right now. I don't think anybody did, but just seeing how they're playing and just, you knew that last year was something special and that they were going to be able to build off of it. So I'm obviously very much impressed by what they've done, but at the same time, I'm like, okay, I expect them to be good, so this is good.
To kind of build off of that too, what I also think was key for this team this year was that playoff run last year. It is a really young group when you kind of take a look at it. You know, there's a lot of players, even that we call veterans, that are leaders on this team, like Matt Turner, who made his first real run in the postseason last year. So I think also, and you know, you have Brandon Bai, Dejuan Jones, a lot of players who are staples in the starting lineup that really hadn't experienced playoff wins. And I think having that sort of that's sort of on your resume at this point, it kind of gives you that drive. Like, you always want to win a championship, of course, but having a taste of what it's like to have that success, I think really kind of helped propel them. And I think coming into this season, a lot of them even talked about it, how they wanted more than just making it to the Eastern Conference Final. So I think having the deep playoff run was really beneficial for this group, and hopefully it's just more to come this year.
And I think that every single player that you've mentioned has grown as a player.
Yes.
Throughout this season. So guys like Brandon Bai, Dejuan Jones, Matt Polster.
Yes.
Like, all these guys are just a level up.
Agreed.
On what they were last year. So I think that's been a huge, huge thing too.
Yeah, and with all that, we knew players were going to get better. We knew the team was going to have kind of another year to gel together. Bruce Arena was going to have another full year with the team. It was essentially going to kind of get into his first real normal full season with the group, because he came in halfway through 2019 and then had that just bizarre, pandemic-fueled 2020 season. So this was really his first kind of quote-unquote normal season. So certainly expected there to be improvement. I thought the Revs would be a top 5 team in the East for sure, and we're definitely going to challenge for top 3. But you expected Columbus after the run that they made last year. I did not foresee Columbus falling off the way that they have. I didn't expect Philadelphia to struggle in some of the ways that they have this year. I figured that they were still going to be kind of a force at the top of the East. That New York City FC team that the Revs are going to see this weekend is still a really good team, but they've had some periods where they struggled a little bit. So I just, there was no part of me that envisioned the Revs were going to be running away from some of those teams. I figured they were going to be battling with those teams near the top of the East. I just had absolutely no preconceived notions about the New England Revolution being 15 points ahead in the Eastern Conference at this point in the season, and I don't think anybody did, including Bruce Arena, who had a really interesting quote. I wanted to read this quote from Bruce that he had post-game after the win over FC Cincinnati, and he was asked how important it was to pick up another 9 points in a 3-game week. And he said, well, look, anytime you win a game in this league, it's big. I think at this time of year, it's important to get the points in the bank, because as we get down to the last 10 games of the season, it's going to be crazy with teams fighting for playoff positions, and it's going to be really challenging. And for us to have, I think it's 49 points now. 49 points in 22 games is pretty good, and I'll do a little sidebar and say that that's a little bit of an understatement, because 49 points in 22 games is actually tied for the most points at this stage of the season in MLS history. So pretty good, something of an understatement. But Bruce went on to say, it allows for us to have a few slip-ups along the way, which is going to happen. That's all part of it as well. And then Frank Delapa of the Boston Globe followed up and said, but you haven't really had any slip-ups yet this season. And he said, yeah, there haven't been too many at this point. However, one would think that there are going to be some down the road. So I just think it's funny because, Bruce is kind of in the position I think a lot of people are in, kind of not waiting for the other shoe to drop, but like waiting for that little blip at some point that you expect every team to have at some point in the season. And the Revs just have not had that blip yet. But I guess the question then becomes, and I know this is always a question for teams who are on like undefeated seasons, like do you want over the course of the last 10, 12 games there to be like that little blip? Does that make you feel like better going into the postseason if you have like a little 2 or 3 game stretch where you're not like perfect and then it just kind of like sets you up heading into the postseason?
I'll take it first. I honestly kind of think yes. I'm not wishing a setback on anybody, but I know that the teams that go into the playoffs the hottest are the ones that usually go the furthest. Not wishing anything bad on the team, obviously, but I'm hoping that we don't see the slowdown at the end of the season. I think that's when you really do need to heat up. So, there's an international break. Maybe there's an opportunity. Not an opportunity. I hope it doesn't happen. But if you drop a game there, I'm not concerned about dropping a game. Like you said, at Bruce Arena was like there's room for some error and some wiggle room there. But I would prefer to have a blip sooner rather than later, just because I think, like I said, the teams who are hottest going into the playoffs are the ones that are going to go the furthest. And we even saw that with the Revs last year. They kind of heated up towards the end when Carlos got back. So I think I'd rather see a blip if it's going to happen more, a little sooner.
And I think that's kind of where I am too. You have Bruce Arena saying, look, there's going to be a blip at some point. There's 12 games left in the regular season. You have to expect that there's going to be a blip. So I'd rather see that blip in the regular season so that it's not going to come in the playoffs. Yeah,
but define blip, though. I mean, you remember the way the season started. The first half of the Chicago game was not good. And I mean, I think over the course of not recently, but the course of those first couple months, guys were continually saying, we're getting results, but we haven't put together a full 90-minute performance. And there's definitely been other times where they got results and they were really upset after the game. Like they didn't feel that they played well. So now I think, maybe there's some luck involved there. I don't know. But you're getting to the point now where I feel like those were the blips. And this team has really found itself while maintaining a winning rate, being the best in MLS, which again, we didn't expect, but at the same time, I'm not hopeful for a blip. I'll go the opposite way. Not hopeful, but you know what I mean.
Yeah. Like I certainly wouldn't
if
panic.
there was no blip.
Yeah. Fair. I just, I wouldn't at this point, if there was a little one of those where the Revs had really what was the only blip so far this season, where they went 0-2-1 over the 3-game stretch, where they lost to Toronto, Dallas.
I mean, they're going to lose another game. It's it's going to happen.
There'd be no there would be no panic in me if I was like, oh man, a little 3-game stretch where the results didn't come. I just don't think there's any reason to panic in that type of scenario.
Even these upcoming 2 games on the road,
it's
in
a
New
tough
York
stretch
and
coming up.
Yeah, it's gonna be tough.
Yeah.
Well, and I think too. I like you were saying, Jiddle, I guess define blip. I think I'm considering a blip right now like a loss, period, just given how good
that's what it would feel like.
Yeah, but I think what's impressive too is that the Revs, no matter who has been in the lineup, no matter who's been called off the bench, everybody's been putting in their shifts and getting the results with the depth that this group has. So whether it's been Carlos, who's been out rehabbing, Turner, Buchanan, who have been called up for national duty. We've just seen this team kind of cover all their bases and cover all their ground with regards to no matter what's going on and no matter who's suffering an injury, versus there's been seasons before when if there's a star or an anchor in your starting 11 that gets injured and it impacts everybody and everybody kind of gets into that blip or that rut, if you will. So it seems like if the Revs have been handed challenges or blips, quote unquote, that haven't resulted in losing points, that they've been able to handle them with grace. So hopefully they'll maintain that the rest of the season. But like you said, we probably won't go the remainder of the season without a single loss. So, but we won't freak out if it happens. I'll say if because we're that good right now.
Well, yeah, and one of the reasons that I do think that this team can continue on this type of pace is because they have shown that they can win with depth, which we'll talk about, and they've shown that they can win in a lot of different ways. I mean, you just look back at this past week in the 3 wins the Revs had against Toronto, DC, and FC Cincinnati. It was a 2-1 win on the road at Toronto FC, the 3-2 win at home against DC United, and then a dominant 4-1 win at home against FC Cincinnati. So I'll pose to you, Elizabeth, which of those 3 wins, as you look at, was there one of those 3 wins that stood out to you? Was there one that was most impressive to you in terms of those 3 wins?
Yes, I think the 3-2 DC win, just because, we went down at the half. DC got on the board super early and the Revs were not happy about that, but they couldn't really find how to capitalize in the first half. But I think it was a good sign that they came out, obviously scored twice inside of 4 minutes early in the second half. But not only that, I think the fact that they were able to regroup in the locker room at halftime and kind of take control of the game, I think that was a really positive sign. And I know you look at that game too, and obviously the Revs were knocked down to 10 men. They showed a lot of resiliency with that, which was big to get the 3 points. But instead of thinking about how they played, 20 minutes down a man, they were talking about how they conceded late. So I think that's kind of what stands out to me is the mentality of this group, that they want to put together full 90-minute performances all the time, and the resiliency to come from behind and stick it out with 10 men.
Yeah, for me, it was the win at Toronto FC, because when I look at the way that game played out, the Revs were on the road, they're up 1-0. Toronto FC were pressing and pressing and pressing throughout that second half. And Toronto equalized in the 79th minute.
Yeah.
And I know we went in depth a little bit on the pregame show with regards to that game, but I just felt like in that moment, it feels like most teams would have said, okay, we're on the road. We just conceded an equalizer with 10 minutes left. This team is desperate for points. They're going to throw the kitchen sink at us in these final 10 minutes. Let's stay tight. Let's shut up shop. Let's try to get out of here with a point. That ain't the Revs. The Revs MO. That ain't how they operate. They went and scored the game winner 4 minutes later and got out of Toronto with 3 points, and they've done that consistently throughout the year. So for me, that just said so much about this team and their mindset and their confidence and the hunger for 3 points, that in that moment where it would have been so easy to say, let's just try to get out of here with a point, they're like, you know what? No, let's just go win the thing. So that was impressive for me. And we mentioned the depth. The depth has continued to shine. There was 4 changes from the Toronto game to the DC game. 5 changes from the DC game to the Cincinnati game. You mentioned how good they've been without Carlos Heel. They're 4-0-1 without Carlos Heel this year, who was a runaway MVP frontrunner. 4-1-0 when they were missing Matt Turner and Tejeon Buchanan for Gold Cup duty. They've played 2 games without Gustavo Bo this year. They've won both of those games. So a lot of different guys have stepped up, and some of the guys who are starters, who would be starters when everyone else was playing anyway, have stepped up, and then some depth pieces have come in and stepped up. So I'll throw out the question, is there anyone who has particularly impressed you over the course of these past few weeks, as some of kind of the bigger names have been unavailable and guys have had to step up?
Well, I don't know exactly where you're going with this, but Ema Boateng.
I mean, he's a good shout.
Over the last 2 games has definitely been one name that's jumped out. I don't know. I think it's just been kind of a team effort. Tommy McNamara has also been another one over like the recent games that's kind of stepped up, especially given Matt Polster going down a few games ago. I can't even know how many games it was ago at this point. But
Polster's missed 2 games at this point. He went down in Toronto.
Oh, in Toronto. They all blend together at this point, the timing-wise, because we're just working every day. But I think there's been a lot of players that have stepped up. Saw him make the most of his opportunity, scored a goal. I think overall just everybody has kind of been stepping up on all fronts. Adam Buxa, I know he's obviously a designated player. He's supposed to be a star, but we've really seen him kind of in like the second half of the season, I'll say, like kind of come into his own. And I think the confidence is kind of radiating at this point. Like you can see it even when he talks to the media in the press conferences. You see the smirks, you see the confidence. Had a brace earlier this week, so I think he's obviously been another player that's really really stepped up. But he's kind of that's what he's making the big bucks for, because he is the designated player. So it's good to see him kind of come into his own.
Oh, that's who I've got. For me, it's Adam Buxa.
Yeah.
I know that he is a designated player, but he has been every bit of a designated player in the 2021 season. And I know that it's easy to kind of look at the statistics and say, yes, he's starting to find the back of the net. He's in double digits now. He's in the top 5 in MLS in terms of goals scored. And he really has found that finishing touch throughout the past couple of months. But for me, it's everything else that Adam Buxa does. He's just such an impressive player for the entire 90 minutes every time he's on the field. His hold-up play has been elite. His first touch is spectacular. His work rate, he works his butt off all the time. And you saw all the different ways that he can impact a game last week.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously, you look at the FC Cincinnati game, and he has 2 goals and an assist. The assist that he picks up, the secondary assist on Ema Boateng's goal, where he springs Tejeon Buchanan down the right wing with a perfect through ball. It's perfectly weighted. It's perfectly threaded. It's with his right foot, which is his weaker foot. I mean, this guy has skill that I don't think we quite saw at full strength until this year. But you look at that game and say, okay, he had 2 goals and an assist. There's your DP forward performance. But then even going back to the Toronto game, he's just working his tail off. He wins the penalty in the 84th minute that Gustavo Bo ends up finishing off to win that game. He comes off the bench at halftime of the DC game and helps spark them to 3 goals in the second half of that game. And it's his work rate, just fighting, battling, scrapping for the ball, that ends up fighting to knock the ball loose for Dejuan Jones to score the game-winning goal. Like, Adam Buxa is just doing so much for this team every single game.
Yep. And
I just feel like at this point he has made himself an indispensable part of that starting 11. And to the point that now he's earned himself a call up with the Poland national team. He's going to go and play in the Poland national team with Robert Lewandowski, one of the best forwards, probably the best forward on the planet. So great opportunity for him to do that. It just seems like he's another player. It seems like every single game he's getting better and better, and the confidence is rising. Jed, I don't know if there's anyone who you would want it to throw out.
I've enjoyed watching Dejuan Jones play. Like, just he's picked up a goal and an assist recently. That cross he put into Tejeon for Tejeon's header was just perfect. He's I think he switched sides on a couple of the games and playing on either side of the wing. He's lightning fast. He's just, you never know. I mean, opposing teams just I don't think they know what to do when you have Dejuan, you have Tejeon, you have Adam Buxa, you have all these pieces, and I think Dejuan's just a big part of that in just kind of confusing defenses and being able to throw crosses in there and just really get after it. So I've just really enjoyed watching him play his last couple games.
You mentioned the combination between Dejuan Jones and Tejeon Buchanan. What I love about every time that they link up is they're actually roommates, and so I think it's so funny whenever they have a cross and then Buchanan puts it in, or vice versa, or anything like that. Because it's just one of those things. When you do something great with one of your good friends, and it just makes me happy that the two of them were able to connect like that.
And then they can just go back and on the road and in their rooms and just watch the highlights on the computer.
Yeah.
And be like, oh yeah, that was us.
Yeah. No, it's just something a little extra,
Yep.
And this recent run, as we mentioned, the depth, it's been without Carla Seal. We know he's missed the last 5 games. Matt Polster's missed a couple of games. Brandon By's missed a couple of games. And as you look forward, when everyone's back and healthy, Bruce Arena is going to have some decisions to make in terms of what his ideal 11 looks like at this point, because it's really been since probably the very early part of the season since they've had a fully healthy available lineup. So I don't know. I tried to kind of take a stab at what I feel like the first choice 11 is at the moment, and I guess I'll just throw it out there and we can see if anybody has kind of any different opinions. I mean, obviously, Matt Turner is your starting goalkeeper.
Are you sure?
I think depends on how he does throughout the next few games, but he's getting close to locking up that spot. It might depend how he does at the All-Star game.
Yeah, I know.
If he plays well at the All-Star game, he might lock up the Revs #1 spot.
It might happen.
It feels like the back line is sort of worked itself out at this point with when everyone's healthy. Dejuan Jones on the left, Brandon By on the right, and Henry Kessler and Andrew Farrell in the middle. Obviously, Christian Moffala is going to push Dejuan Jones at that spot, but it feels like Dejuan Jones is a starter at this point. Central midfield is where it gets a little bit tough. It obviously depends on what formation they're playing, but I think Matt Polster, when he is fully healthy, is a written in pen in the starting 11. And I think alongside Matt Polster right now, I think if it was your first choice 11 today, it's Tommy McNamara.
I was hoping you were saying that.
Has played his way into that spot. I know obviously you're going to get competition from Wilfred Kaptoum and Maciel. There are other guys who've been in that spot this season, but it feels like if you're putting out your first choice 11, I think right now that's Tommy McNamara.
I totally agree with you. That would be my combo in the midfield.
And then I feel like, I don't know exactly how everything would line up, but I feel like your front four in your first choice 11 kind of has to be Carlos Heel, Tejeon Buchanan, Gustavo Bo, and Adam Buxa. I don't know if they play sort of a similar setup as they have now, where it's sort of a box four, front four, or if it goes to that 4-2-3-1 and maybe you put Bo a little wider left. I don't know. I don't know how exactly how you set that up. That's Bruce Arena's job. But yeah, it feels like there are a lot of guys who, Arnold Tristison doesn't end up being in that 11, and Maciel and Kaptoum and Ema Boateng is playing so well. But I think right now, for me, that's probably my first choice 11, but Bruce Arena's going to have some decisions to make once everybody's healthy.
Well, not exactly like that.
I think it'd be exactly like that.
Yeah, I have to agree with you on, honestly, all of those fronts. I think we've seen a lot of depth showcase talent, but these are the ones that have been the most consistent. And I think consistency is going to be kind of the key when you come down to it. But the good news is these are tough decisions for Arena to make. So he's going to have a lot of good options off the bench, no matter what the actual starting 11 is when everyone's healthy.
Yep, for sure. All right, well, hopefully as we get closer to the playoffs, we will see a fully healthy squad and find out exactly what that first choice 11 is going to be. I'm looking forward to it. For now, we'll take a very quick break. When we come back, we will be joined on the podcast by someone we have mentioned quite a few times through the first part of the show, the breakout star of the past week, winger Ema Boateng.
Welcome back to the Far Post Podcast. We are pleased to be joined by winger Ema Boateng right now. Ema, you had a big moment last game making your first Revolution start, but this might be an even bigger moment, your first Far Post Podcast appearance with the club. How hyped are you to be joining the squad right now?
So hyped!
That's the best reaction.
Yes!
That's the best reaction we've ever gotten for our
so.
Post podcast guest. This is the 352nd episode of the show. We have never had a guest be this hyped. So now I'm hyped because you're hyped. We're feeding off the energy. I like where we're going.
There we go. This is special. Yeah, it was a great week last week, and just a lot of positives to take out of it. A few things that I could learn to be better too, but overall, it's a great week for the whole team, so everybody's in good spirits and feels awesome. And thanks for you guys inviting me on.
Of course. After that intro, I think you're welcome back anytime you want. So you can just come bang on the door and you'll be our guest any week you want to come in and join us. So.
All right. See you guys real soon.
Yeah, you're on the show now.
For when Ema's soccer career is done, we now know he has a career with the Far Post Podcast. So you're locked in for that, Ema. But in all seriousness, it was a really big moment for you making that start with the team. And also over the last 2 games, you had a goal, 2 assists. And it's been, I know you've talked about it with us, but it's been a battle for minutes this year, just with the depth that this team has. So how motivated were you to make the most of those opportunities when you were given the chance?
I just knew what I needed to do when I came on the field. I think the Toronto game, I came on and did really well that second half, and played well also in the Miami game. We were already winning 4-0. But I didn't think I was as aggressive against Nashville when I came on. It was a 0-0 game, and I don't think I did enough to impact it. And so, I could feel that a little bit. The week after that in training, I just, was a little bit. I told myself I needed to step up, with my next opportunity. And, that was like maybe 3 games later, got a chance to do that. And Shaori and Dave have been on me a lot in training to be a little bit more aggressive, take chances, don't worry about the consequences, just, try to go at guys. So last week just felt like I needed to step my game up a little bit and just come in and make things happen.
You mentioned the message from Dave and Shalry in training in terms of kind of telling you what they wanted to see from you. What was the message from Bruce kind of through the early part of the season, where obviously you're trying to, I know you dealt with a couple of little injuries, you're trying to get back on the field, and then once you're healthy again, you're trying to break in for minutes, but it's a team that's really deep. The team is winning games, so it was always difficult. What was Bruce's message to you kind of through that stretch as you're trying to get yourself on the field?
Yeah, I was talking to Bruce quite often throughout that stretch, and I understand that sometimes I put myself in the coach's shoes. Like, the team is winning. We're still number one in the entire country, winning games and doing well, so I knew it was going to be tough to get in. But I just, kept working hard, and he was telling me, hey, you're doing a lot, you're showing us a lot in training. There are some moments that I wish to see a little bit more, and that's the aggressive part, taking guys on, putting in crosses in the box. And, he just told me to bide my time. And, going through that week by week is like, man, how long do I need to wait? You keep telling me, and, the season is already halfway done and all that stuff. But, just had to stay in there. We have a good group of guys here. Guys know what I can bring to the team. And, just from talking to teammates, a lot of guys also just like, Ema, we know what you can do. Just, don't get down on yourself. Just stay positive. Be in the group with us. And when you get your chance, just take advantage of it. So it's a good group. Guys motivating each other, coaches giving out the right information. And I just knew, the next time I get my opportunity, just got to give it all. And that's kind of what happened last week. And then now the challenge is it's got to stay like that, or even better, I can have it drop. So hard week as well this week. I know a lot of teams around the league are probably like getting a little bit of like an easy week because there's no midweek game, but we're working hard, and hopefully I can keep building on that performance.
Coach Arena, too, is somebody that knew coming in. I know we had an interview back in January when you signed, and you talked about how you played under him for a little bit in LA. So when you came here, did this kind of exceed your expectations for what you signed on back in January?
Exceed my expectations.
As far as how the team is doing, and when you were like, oh, I'm going to go play for Bruce Arena again, what were your expectations kind of coming in versus now?
Yeah, my expectations was, this is a coach that I'm familiar with, played on his team back in 2016, and know a little bit of how he likes to run his sessions, what he likes out of players and everything. And so, coming in, looking at how the season was last year, the team didn't perform as well as we're performing this year. So, I thought it would be a little bit easier to get in. I'll be able to get my chance early on in the season. So I expected that, to get a chance to prove myself early. And, throughout the year, there will be games where I'll start, I won't start, come off the bench and stuff. But that wasn't what happened early on. I think maybe after didn't get a chance to play until maybe like 12 games into the season, and had to wait another 3 days or whatever to get another opportunity. So, 3 games to get another opportunity. So, the beginning was a little bit tougher, and I didn't expect that. I thought I would be getting a shot early on to prove myself. So, but as far as the team, getting here in preseason and seeing how hard everybody was working in the gym, this was even before we were allowed to come in to work as a group. So this was all voluntary stuff. And, you had guys that, veterans, like Scotty was here, Tommy was here, Teal Bomber, Andrew Farrell. Like, these guys, didn't need that work or didn't have to come in every day, but they were here. So that aspect was a very positive outcome, just seeing everybody work really hard even before the season started.
No, it wasn't that long ago that you were with Bruce in LA. It was 5 years ago. But is Bruce the same coach as he was 5 years ago in LA? Has he changed at all, or is he the same guy you remember from LA?
He's the same guy.
Yeah. He is who he is.
Yeah, he likes to, buzz balls in training, just crack jokes to get the atmosphere to be a little bit loose. But, once the whistle starts and we're actually done with the warm-ups and everything, it's all about business. And, he's a good guy. He cares about his players, We'll check in here and there to see how you're doing and all that. So all that is the same. And when it gets to the game days, all he wants to do is win. He doesn't care how you do it. He just wants guys working hard and getting him to win.
It's funny you say that. I remember interviewing AJ earlier this year, and he said he uses the exact same drills from when he was in LA, like, you know, when he first started with LA back then. So it's just pretty funny to hear you echoing that.
If it's working, don't change it.
I mean,
a lot of championships that way, so stick with it.
He's got a winning way, and he sticks to it. I appreciate that. But speaking of, what is it about Bruce Arena that allows him to get the best out of every single player anywhere that he coaches?
He's very in tune with his players. He knows. I always tell the guys, like, when we're warming up, like, you see him almost like a vulture, like, circling us, like like we'll be warming up, everybody's like in the middle, you know, stretching, whatever, and he's just like walking around, just like having a gauge of everybody, looking at your body, posture, seeing like guys that are ready for like the session, or, you know, guys. That is all part of like his process. And even in here too, like, you know, he'll be walking through the gym, saying hi to guys, just kind of getting, and he talks to guys too, like, hey, how are you feeling? I know there's, you know, 3 games in the week and you've played 2 of them, you played both 90 minutes. How do you feel? How much can you give us and all that? So he takes like a lot of input from the players, as well as he trusts his observations. I mean, he's been doing this for a long time, so he can tell when a player is, you know, trying to, you know, lie about like how they're feeling or really. So he is very in tune with the team. He knows spots to play guys depending on the matchups that we have and all that stuff. And, you know, he's just like a brilliant coach. His accomplishment speaks for himself.
Yeah, it seems like players always talk about, obviously there's the on-field stuff, there's the soccer knowledge, there's the tactical knowledge and all of that, and kind of, you know, scouting players and knowing how to build a roster. But it seems like the thing guys always come back to, even above that, is kind of that man management, those relationships that he has with the players.
Yeah, he's, like I said, very in tune with the players. We'll check in with you, whether it's, you know, soccer or like, you know, you have a family issue off the field and stuff. He will talk to you about it a little bit just to gauge and try to help you if he can. His man management, you know, he talks to guys, and it's ultimately about, you know, who is ready to give him the win. It's all about the win and all that stuff. So he will talk to guys, try to get the most out of you, and knows positions to play you depending on how the game is going. So, yeah, even tactically too. So the game is going on. How can I change the game? How can I get something different? His whole approach. So he comes into the game on game days having like several ideas how he wants the game to go in, and if something changes that he didn't expect, he always has like an answer to try to, you know, get us back in the game.
We know Bruce has his winning ways, and we're experiencing them right here and right now. Last year, you actually won an MLS Cup with the Columbus Crew. So I'm curious, how does the locker room kind of compare between Columbus when you were on that path to get the MLS Cup versus in the Revolution right now? Is it a little more confident at this point in the season? Just what are kind of your takeaways on that?
Yeah, for sure. Guys are very confident. We're stepping into games not expecting to win. We know how good we are, but we know we have to put in the work. We've seen games where early on maybe we've gone down a goal and have to climb our way back and all that stuff. So we don't expect any game to be easy. We know that we can win, but we don't expect it to be easy. We know we have to play out our very best. And, you know, we've done many video sessions where the coaches have been on us and telling us, like, hey, like, it has to be at the top level each time for us to win. And so that similarity, like, you know, in Columbus, Caleb was like that with us. Like, no matter how well we're doing in the standings, he was always on us, like, hey, guys, like, do not relax. Like, this is a long way. We still have a long way to go, and everybody's got to be ready and pitch in. And you could see that in the playoffs. We had maybe 5 COVID cases in the last 2 weeks of the season, and had guys step up. Like, you know, we had an 18-year-old Adrian Morris in Columbus step up and play in the final and did brilliant, and he probably had maybe 4 games the entire season. So Caleb just getting the whole group ready, and I feel like it's the same here with the depth that we have on the team. Everybody that has had the opportunity to step up has done pretty well, and just worked hard for the team, and we keep getting results that way.
We know that we've seen you step up with your opportunities like we touched on earlier. You know, in the win over DC, you played a really impressive cross to Tejeon Buchanan to get that goal. And then against FC Cincinnati, he repaid the favor. You know, he crossed to you so that you could get your first Revolution goal. What were your emotions following that performance?
Against, I guess both games, it was just like a little bit of a relief just to get that off my back, because I'd been waiting a long time for that, and I knew I could do it. I knew I had the teammates around me to help me to do that. And so it was just a matter of, like, you know, when am I going to be able to do it? Like, you know, am I going to get a chance to do that this year? So obviously it was like a little bit of a tough situation to be in, but I just kept my head down. So once, you know, some of these like good moments are coming, it feels great. And, you know, a lot of the reward, my praise goes to my teammates as well, you know, putting me in like good positions to do that. And I think we have a long way to go, and no way getting too excited about just those two performances. I've been in this league long enough to know that you have to keep performing at that level to, you know, win something in this league. So it felt great. It was awesome. It was a little bit of a relief. And then now, like I said earlier, just got to keep playing like that.
Yeah, no, there's still a lot of work in front of you guys, and it's been great to hear everybody echo that sentiment in the locker room. Yeah. But also, the attack really has been clicking these last few games. And when you look at some of the pieces in this attack, in the depth in this attack, have you ever been part of an attacking group that was this dynamic and had this many pieces that can do this many different things?
Yeah, maybe I would say the 2016 season in LA, when, you know, we had maybe 3 MVPs on the field at the time. We had Mike McGee, who will come in, switching in games here and there, start a lot of games. We had Alan Gordon, we had Robbie Keane, Steven Gerrard. I mean, these names, Steven Gerrard was my hero growing up as a Liverpool fan. So, yeah, it's I've played on teams like that, but this is a little bit different, obviously, like a younger group, guys hungry, trying to make a name for ourselves. So every time you get an opportunity to get out there, you just want to make the most out of it. So, yeah, we have a strong group here for sure, and a very special group of guys trying to, really perform week in, week out.
Speaking of hungry younger guys, winger Tejeon Buchanan, huge week for him with the news yesterday, the 22-year-old signing in Belgium overseas with Club Bruges. So I'm just wondering, how did you and your teammates learn that news about his signing, and what was your reaction?
You know, there's been rumors around for maybe 2-3 months now about, you know, something happening, and he's backed it up. He's done really well during that stretch, and, you know, just been doing well. The more people are talking about him, the better he's been performing. So I think it was last week, right before our game, and I was just in the locker room talking to Theo, and we were talking about the guys leaving for All-Star game and when they were going to leave and stuff. And Theo's like, well, Tejon's not going on that. He's got a different flight. So, you know, just kind of like joking. He started smiling, so I knew what it was. And then, you know, yesterday we found out the news that, you know, he signed in Belgium and will be leaving in January, but he's coming back actually tonight. We'll be back with the team just to finish out the season. So it's great for him. I think it will be a great step for him. He's done everything to deserve that opportunity to move up there. And, you know, we're just glad we can have him to finish the season as well. And he's a great player. He works hard. You know, he's a good guy in the locker room as well.
When you were a young player, you found yourself in a somewhat similar situation. Went over and started your career in Sweden. So you were a young player, right? Didn't speak the language, playing in Europe. What one piece of advice might you give to Tejeon as he heads off to Belgium to begin this journey?
One thing I would say probably is it's good to learn the language early. Even if it's not the language, try to get in with your teammates early, because, you know, he's gonna be so far away from home, and, you know, I'm sure probably, you know, he'll go with a friend, or, like, you know, his family is gonna come visit and stuff. But it's still a little bit different. You go to the stores and, you know, you're trying to buy the stuff that you usually buy. the stuff that you usually buy here, whether it's like, laundry detergents or whatever, it's all like in a different language on the thing. So you got to have people help you out a little bit. I remember my first week in Sweden, I trying to buy some laundry detergents, ended up buying like shampoo. And, like, my clothes all came out looking like weird. And I was telling my teammate came to visit me. I was like, man, like, what's wrong with this? Like, actually, dude, this is not detergent. It's actually shampoo. I'm like, I've seen it at your house. Like, yeah, I was right next, because I saw it at his house,
gotcha.
right next to his washer, and I just assumed that was it. So I just walked in there, picked one. It's like, nah, that's actually shampoo. So, it would be good for him to get in early. It's good, for a young player like that, get in there. Talk to the guys on the team, get acclimated with everybody, and once you feel part of the group, it's easier to transition. Go out to dinner with the guys, do stuff. I'm not very good at golfing, but I was out there on the golf course with them all the time, just kind of, trying to get in, and I think that really helps early on with your transition.
Now, how much Swedish do you speak?
A little bit.
Yeah?
The thing is, I can pick up a book or like a newspaper and be able to read and get like the main gist of it.
Yep.
Speaking it is a little bit different. Arnold sometimes speaks a little bit, and I can understand him when he's talking, but me speaking it itself, I think I've lost a lot of it.
I can understand that. It's a lot, in my opinion, it's easier to pick up bits and pieces from someone versus come up with the words on your own in a different language and speak it. My other question is, why is someone having their laundry detergent next to their shampoo? Because you wouldn't have had an issue with it.
I know. Andreas Linde. That's my guy. That's the one to blame.
He was probably messing with you. He probably knew exactly what he was doing.
Strategic. Rookie prank, right?
Yeah, I guess.
You mentioned that Tejeon's going to be coming back soon. How big of a welcome will he get when he gets back? What's the locker room going to be like?
Oh yeah, everybody's gonna be on him. I'm sure there's gonna be a dinner soon, and we're gonna expect him to pay for everybody there. He's just went there and picked up the bag, so he's gotta shell it out. Make sure everybody gets paid too. But yeah, it's great. It's great. It's a great week for him, and when he comes, for sure, like, there will be banter all week about it. Yeah.
That's awesome. We love good banter here in New England. Yeah. That's for sure. Well, you guys are heading to New York City FC this weekend. It's one of those games that could be a battle. It's a really small field, the smallest one in the league. They're fifth in the East, and they're a team that's really been on the rise in recent weeks. So what kind of battle are you expecting in the Bronx?
They're a tough group. Tactically very good. They're actually one of the teams that I've really enjoyed watching this year. Their field is small and everything, but they find ways to like open up. They got some fast wingers. They like to build from the back and just spread you out as much as they can. Some lethal forwards. Castellanos scoring a lot of goals. Both wingers. Medina has been very productive. Morales right there in the midfield pulling out all the strings. They have a very good team, and we think it's going to be a battle. We've already played them this year and saw how it was, got a win late in that game. So we expect it to be a battle, and I just got to be ready to compete. We also have a way, mostly tomorrow, go over all of our tactical work, how to break them down. So we just try to execute that and just, win our one-on-one battles. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, does anybody else have any other questions?
I say we'll let you get back to preparing for that weekend game against New York City FC, because if you guys win, it makes our job a lot easier. So we want you to be as prepared as possible.
For sure. Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, thanks so much for having us joining us.
Thank you. I'll be. You guys have to create a segment for Ema. I'll just come.
Yeah,
I think we might
every week. We'll do that for sure.
All right. Thanks again.
Be careful
Ema.
what you wish for.
Thanks again, Ema. We'll be back shortly.
Welcome back to the Far Post Podcast presented by ESports Gaming League. We're looking ahead now to a stretch of games that we have mentioned throughout the show, a difficult stretch of games coming up for the Revolution, and a big opportunity to see exactly where they stand over the course of the next couple of weeks. I think we have a pretty good idea of where they stand, but still a pretty big stretch coming up. The next three games, as we've alluded to, at NYCFC this weekend, at Philadelphia next Friday night, Labor Day weekend, and then home against New York City FC once again. So when you look at this game this weekend, this trip to Yankee Stadium to face New York City FC, just going to lay out some stats just to kind of give people a sense for how good this New York City FC team have been at Yankee Stadium specifically. Because the Revs did play New York City FC earlier this year at Red Bull Arena. Picked up a 3-2 win in that game. Matt Turner stood on his head, was MLS Player of the Week for that performance. But the Revs will now go to Yankee Stadium, where NYCFC have played 4 games this season. They're 3-0-1, have outscored opponents 15-2 in those 4 games. They have a 4-1 win, a 5-0 win, a 5-0 win, and a 1-1 draw. So this is a team that has been really, really good at Yankee Stadium.
Who did they play?
They beat Orlando 5-0. They beat Cincinnati 5-0. They beat Columbus 4-1, I believe, and then they tied Toronto 1-1.
Wow.
It was a shorthanded Orlando team that they beat 5-0.
I mean, hey, there's no...
yeah.
It's 15 goals, man.
15 goals in 4 games at Yankee Stadium. And it does feel like this is that first game where we're looking at, and you're like, this is a really big test. It feels like that first really big test since that Columbus game on July 3rd felt like a really big test. But this feels like, as you look ahead to this weekend, you're like, all right, this is a little bit of a measuring stick kind of game.
Yeah, I think so. I think you're also going to have 2 of your star players coming back from the All-Star game, which, you know, to kind of add fuel to the fire. I know we talked about it on the last episode, but you haven't had any guys who have had to do the cross-country travel this year. So while the majority of the team did have a little bit of a break, you are going to have 2 of your star players coming back potentially in the starting lineup and might be dealing with the time difference, the jet lag, or I don't know, they're all big guys. Like, you know, I have to imagine like having your legs on a plane is probably not great for them for a while. So I think you're going to have that element to it. New York City FC, obviously, as you mentioned, they're really dangerous at home. They're a team that's been heating up. They've only dropped 1 game in their last 7. So I think it is going to be a bit of a measuring stick game, and especially because at this point the Revs have been so good, so consistent, that this just seems like a little bit of an extra challenge. So could this be the blip? I don't know. It could be. So, and especially not having Carlos Gil available as well. But there's a lot of players who are hungry, and I don't know, this team, they don't want to slow down. So we'll have to see.
Well, I'll say every time this year we have said this game's a really big test, the Revs have passed that test with flying colors pretty much every single time. But this does feel like a pretty big test. And then the 2 New York City FC games are the 2 I'm really kind of honing in on, because the Philadelphia game is going to be such a crapshoot.
Yeah.
It's played during that international weekend, so we know the Revs are going to be missing Adam Buxa for that game to pull in national team duty. We certainly expect that the Revs are going to be missing Tejeon Buchanan to Canada, Matt Turner to the U.S. national team, very likely Arnar Thrisson to Iceland. Mm-hmm. Philadelphia will be missing several pieces as well. So that game's going to be a weird game to try to kind of gauge, just because both teams are probably going to be missing so many pieces.
Yeah.
But those 2 New York City FC games are going to be pretty big. And I think importantly for the Revs, they're going to be somewhat rested heading into this weekend. They had a full week between games, Saturday to Saturday, for the first time since July 7th to the 17th, when they had that little 10-day break. They just played 9 games in a 36-day stretch. It was an average of 1 game every 4 days. They ended up going 8-0-1 through that stretch, but it is an absolutely grueling stretch. And now they'll play 4 games in 28 days. You get a little bit of an opportunity to rest. I know from our end, it feels like, well, you need an opportunity to breathe just a little bit in terms of so many games. From the player's perspective, I think it's a really welcome opportunity to just rest the legs for a little bit and kind of get ready for what's coming the rest of the season.
Yeah, I think in addition to it being a good opportunity to kind of like rest your legs, recover a little bit, and also train a little bit harder, like have some more in-depth sort of sessions where you can really go full out and you're not worried about going too hard because you're running up against a game with a quick turnaround. I also feel like mentally for the players, and I know for all of us here as well, it's got to be nice to have something like of your nights back and like a little bit of extra time with your family and the things that fill up your cup. So I think it kind of works both ways for the players in that sense, that not only is it a really great physical break and opportunity to kind of push yourself because you have a little more time to recover, but I'm sure for them, it's got to be nice to spend more time with people that they love in their life and their families and kind of fill up their cups before they have a really tough run through the latter half of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the mental part of it can be just as grueling as the physical part. And it really was. After the game on Saturday, the players had Sunday, Monday off. Mm-hmm. And that was the first back-to-back days that they'd had off in about a month and a half. So yeah, they're at the facility pretty much every single day, and that can, while they're not here all day, it's a grind.
Oh yeah.
And it's a physical toll on the body when you're playing a game every 4 days or so. When you start to see it take its toll a little bit, I mean, that's why every team in the league is digging into their depth right now. It's why guys are getting banged up. It's why you see Brandon Bye with a little bit of an injury and Matt Polster with a little bit of an injury. Guys at this point in the season playing this many games, you just get banged up. But there is one guy who doesn't seem like he ever gets banged up. and that is
great segue.
That is Andrew Farrell. He is on course this weekend to set the all-time appearance record. I know it seems like every single weekend we're talking about a brand new appearance for Andrew Farrell. He has already, within the past few weeks, has set the all-time starts record for the club. Last week he set the all-time minutes record for the club. These are all regular season records, by the way, because that's the way that MLS views them. That gets confusing. That's a whole other topic. But regular season starts, regular season minutes, and now this weekend with a 262nd appearance would stand alone at the top of the Revolution's all-time appearance chart, surpassing both Diego Fagundez and Shalry Joseph, who he's currently tied with in 261 appearances. So I wanted to put out what I think might be a kind of a fun question with Andrew Farrell, set to make appearance 262 this weekend. He's 29 years old. How many appearances, is there a range of how many appearances you think Andrew Farrell is going to finish with, and then will that record ever be broken in Revolution history?
You mean finish with when he's
like
done?
career number of Revolution regular season appearances for Andrew Farrell.
That's a tough one. I'm going to go with maybe 262. I don't know. I feel like a lot of it is going to depend on his longevity with the team, to be honest, because at this point, he's been a starter since he was drafted in 2013. So
that's really the question is, how much longer do you feel like he can keep it rolling?
All right, well, he's been a starter that's been playing 90 minutes for a very long time.
9 straight seasons.
And if there is a drop-off period, you have to imagine that he's still a reliable source. I know you don't typically sub defenders, but with the new 5 sub rule, if you're looking to close out a game and he's not a starter, you might put in veteran Andrew Farrell. So okay. I don't know. I don't know that Farrell wants to go 400, so I won't go quite that high. But I think he's going to be at least mid to high 300s at this point. If you put him in for, let's say he averages 30 games a year, that's 3 years more basically. I think he has a lot more in him, and it seems daunting, but he's 29 years old.
Well, that's the thing. That's my number. My number was 375 because that's 4 more years of starting every single game.
Yeah.
Again, and maybe he's got more in him than that. But yeah, that was. I wouldn't be shocked if he ends up pushing that 400 number. I know every time anyone mentions a 400 to him, he's like, I don't think I'm getting to 400. But I would put 375 out there for sure because I think he's got at least 3-4 more years of playing every single minute of every single game.
Yeah.
Maybe Andrew doesn't feel that way. Maybe his knees don't feel that way. But that's the way I feel about Andrew Farrell for sure. And I think whatever number it is that he ends up with, I think that's going to be at the top of the record chart for a long, long time. I just don't see anybody break to be a consistent starter every single game, day in, day out for a decade plus. Guys don't do that very often. That's going to be a really difficult number to break, whatever that number ends up being.
I think also the minutes too. I know that one is already surpassed, but at this point, if he's playing 90 minutes still for a couple years, that record is going to get up there too.
Oh, the minutes number, I don't think no one's going to touch those types of records. I don't think, at least for a long, long time.
Yeah.
What episode of the podcast is this?
352.
All right, that's where I'm going to go.
Okay, I like that.
Well done.
By the time he gets there,
that. I was thinking 350, but I'm like, yeah, we're 352. So
perfect.
Took us a little longer to get there, though.
Just a little bit.
Not too much. We started in 2011.
Yeah.
He was a rookie in 2013. So I guess it wasn't too much longer for us to get to 350. But we also get to do shows in the off season. He doesn't get to play games in the off season.
I'm also going to bust your bubble here too, but his minutes record is going to be way higher than yours, even though sometimes you go on pretty long.
I don't know about that. If you even listened to the early episodes.
I mean, I guess that's true, but if we're doing recent weeks, if say you average 60, even 75 minutes once a week, I don't know.
He's got us beat on minutes for sure. Our minutes are up there.
I'm not saying they're not.
Yeah, I mean, my voice has taken a beating over the years. It's, It's my voice and Andrew's knees are pretty much the same thing.
There are minutes of people's lives that they will not get back from those early days.
That's true.
Including me.
Guys, what did you do without me before I came on? It sounds like I've been the difference maker over the couple of years.
We just
4 years.
We just kind of threw topics out there, and then Cahal would talk for a while.
Cahal talks a lot too.
Yeah, that's true.
And we had
That's
Charlie
true.
on the show for a while, and he can talk with the best of them. So
When the two of them were on the show, I was like,
Yeah.
I know I'm not going to get to give my opinion because there's no time, and two, there's no opportunity.
now you just push away from the mic. You're like, well,
Yeah, that was essentially what was
this
happening.
is the most I've talked in like a year on this show. What do you?
Yeah.
You know, it's just
It's true.
it's what it is.
I did want to note as well before we wrap up, we will be celebrating all of Andrew Farrell's achievements in person at Gillette Stadium. I don't know exactly what day that's going to be yet because obviously he's scheduled right now to set the record on the road. Yep. But there will be a day at Gillette Stadium where we're able to recognize Andrew for all of the accomplishments that he has achieved over the course of the past month or so. So we'll look forward to getting to do that in person at Gillette Stadium, and Andrew Farrell deserves all of the recognition that he is going to get. But for now I think we're a little over an hour this week, right?
Yeah,
Too
we're
bad.
okay.
Not too bad. That'll do it for this week. And we could go 90 if we want. If we want to get a full 90 in, I could find 30 more minutes of stuff to talk about. If we
I'm
wanted
subbing
to.
you guys off. Head coach over here.
I got to eat lunch.
I do need some lunch. All right. Well, then I guess since we all need to eat, that'll do it for this week's episode of the Far Post Podcast, presented by ESports Gaming League. Thanks so much for listening. Thank you, of course, to Ema Boateng for joining the show as well. We'll get to work on the new segment, the Ema Boateng segment, so we'll have him on the show every week. We just need to come up with a name. And hey, with no midweek games for a while, we might actually get to do another show next week.
Yeah, wow.
If
I'm
we want to.
hyped.
If we want to. I'm pretty hyped too. We'll see you soon on the Far Post Podcast presented by ESports Gaming League.